Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we will continue working with the visual editor and more specifically the dropdowns. I'm sure everyone is well familiar with what the dropdowns are. For example, Cars.com uses the dropdowns to navigate the users through vehicle selection process where you can choose the make and the model of the car. Kayak.com uses the dropdowns for the users to choose the origin and destination for their next flights. So I'm sure you get the idea. You've seen the dropdowns a million times. They're very widely used on the modern websites. In the framework of the web applications built by ASPRunner and PHPRunner, you might want to consider using the dropdowns on the Add and Edit pages, as well as the search page. Let's take a look at a specific example how to use dropdowns. We are building a web form for sales team where they enter the orders, which are ultimately stored in the orders table. We have a bunch of fields they need to fill out. One of them is the product field. So to make this field a dropdown, we need to access its properties and select control type called Lookup Wizard. It's called Lookup Wizard because we will be looking up the values for a dropdown. To populate the values for the dropdowns, you have a couple options. First, you can key them right in. Or second, you can pull the values from a database table. We always recommend storing and using the values from tables for the ease of maintenance. If you store the values right in the Lookup Wizard, anytime you need to modify the values, you will have to do it in the software, which will ultimately require a project rebuild and re-upload to your web server. With option 2, you can simply modify the values in the table, which will automatically be reflected in the dropdown. Let me quickly show you how the values look if you choose to key them in. I will just enter 1, 2, 3 is my values. And if I build the project real quick, and show you how this looks, add new page, you'll see that I have 1, 2, 3 as the values for the dropdown. So let's go back to the visual editor. So I'm going to switch back to database values because this is going to be the topic of our next conversation. So now let's try to pull the values from a table. One thing you will notice is that you aren't limited to just the tables. You can also use the views and custom views to pull the values from the dropdown. In my example, I have a table products that stores the list of all of the products. Let me show you quickly how this table looks in a database. So you see it has a product ID, product name, supplier, category, and a few other fields. So going back to the software, I will select the products as my table. The link field is the field from a lookup table which will be supplying the values into your dropdown. Depending on how you want to store your data, you can either choose to keep the ID of the product or the product name. If you choose the product ID will be stored in the orders table. Or if you want to store the product name, you can just select the product name. I choose to store the product ID. Now here's our dilemma. The sales team doesn't have a clue what IDs the products have, and rightfully so. However, they do know the product names. So what I will do is, while storing the product ID in a table, I will display to the users the product names by selecting the product name field as the display field. One thing to keep in mind while working with the drop-down boxes is you can test the drop-down box even before you build your web application. You can do so by clicking the Tested button located right here. I'm going to click the Tested, and what we see here is we have the actual drop-down box, in our case full of all of the product names, and we have the selected value field, which is actually the ID of the product that is going to be stored in a table. So I'm going to click tofu, and ID number 14 is what's actually going to be stored in a table once tofu is selected. Let me quickly show you what would have happened if you chose to keep the product ID as your display field. You can click Tested button again, and you're going to see that it's not very user-friendly. All of your IDs is displayed, and user has no idea exactly what product they're choosing. So choosing the product name as display name is much more user-friendly, while still keeping the integrity of the data in populating the product ID with the correct ID. Also, while you can choose any of the fields as display field, you can also create a custom expression. For example, I can add a price to the product to the display field. Unit price. Depending on the syntax, depending actually on the database you're using, you might have a slightly different syntax for your custom expression. I'm using Microsoft Access, so to concatenate the fields, I'm using the pluses. And if you click the test button, you can see that I have a product name with concatenated price next to it. Let's build our project and take a look at our newly set up dropdown in the application. Build the project, refresh the page. So our product selection is now a drop-down box, and you can see all of the products in the drop-down box selected. Let's add a new order with a couple units of the product chai. So let's select an order, and salesman 1, category 1, product is chai, unit price $7.99, and let's say 3 units. Let's click save. Now let's go back to the database and see how the values are stored in a table. So I'm going to go to the order table. I'm going to open that up, and our order is right here, 10249. We just added a product chai which has an ID of 1, which you can see if you look at the products table. 1 is right here, and so we have a product ID 1. We have a unit price of $7.99, which is rounded to $8, and we have 3 units. Now I want to show you how to take this a step further and set up multiple drop-downs linked together. Just to give you an example of what I mean, let's go back to our orders entry form where we have a product names and product categories. So wouldn't it be nice if every time the user would enter a new order, they could select a product category first and then choose a product that only belonged to that category. For example, you would select the category beverages, and only beverages would be displayed in the drop-down. Or you could select a seafood category, and only seafood products would be displayed. So before we do anything, we need to make sure that we have a mapping in our tables between the categories and the products. Obviously, you can't link the drop-downs if there is no relationship established between them. So if you look at our products table, we'll see that we have a category ID field right here, which correspond to the categories in the category table. So we should be good to go. We have a relationship established between the product IDs and the category IDs. So between our two drop-downs, category and product, category ID would be our master control, and the product would be our child control. So first, I will set up the category control exactly as we just did with the products. So I'm going to go into the properties of the category ID. I'm going to set it up as the lookup wizard. The lookup table will be the categories table. Category ID will be my linked field, and the display field will be the category name. Very similar to how we just set up the product field. I'm going to click the tested button, and I'm going to see the list of a list of the values populated from the categories. These are all my categories in the dropdown. Now the master control is ready. Let's go to the product control and make it a dependent on the category. So I'm going to enter its property once again of the product ID. I'm going to check the checkbox this dropdown is dependent on right here. The category control field is the master control field which this product dropdown is dependent on within our current orders table. In our case, it's obviously the category ID field. The category field is the field from the products lookup table that stores the mapping between the products and categories. In our case, it is also the category ID field. Now I can test both dropdowns and see if we set it up correctly. So let me select the category produce, and I'm going to see only the products that belong to the produce category. Or I can select dairy products, and all of my dairy products are filtered right here. I know it could be a little bit confusing what should be the category control and what is the category field. However, it is very important, so if you think you didn't quite understand it, please rewind the video and watch the section again. Now if we build our project once again and take a look at our orders form, we will see that once again we can select the category in the first drop-down box, and then the product drop-down box filters only for the selected category. I can select the seafood, and only seafood products are displayed. Also, another feature related to drop-downs that you might want to consider for your project is applying advanced security to the lookup values. For example, if I make the salesman ID field a drop-down, very similar to how I've done with the products and categories just recently, I make it a salesman ID is my linked field and display field is the last name, and I build my project, you will see that the salesman ID dropdown displays all of the values from the salesman table. However, what if you wanted to restrict the values to show only salesmen that belong to the same user group as the users of our application? For example, if the user of the application belongs to group A, we want to show only the salesman for group A. Obviously, to do this, we need to make sure that the users and the salesmen have the same sort of grouping information stored in the tables. So let's go to the database and see how our data is stored for users and for salesmen. So our users table has 3 users at the moment, and we have a group ID field that has admin, manager, and the user as the values. And also, if you look at the salesman table, we'll see, and scroll to the right, we will see a group information with the group ID, which also has managers, admin, and users as the values. So we have a relationship between the salesman table and the users table where they share a group IDs. So now we can set up the advanced security for the salesman dropdown. So to apply the advanced security to the salesman lookup table, I will proceed back to the security tab within the software. I will click on advanced link. I will choose a salesman table from the dropdown. The property I'm looking for is the user can see and edit their own data only. I will choose group ID is my linking fields between the users and the salesman table. Now I can log into my application as admin and take a look at the drop-down salesman on our orders form once again. So now I can log in as the user admin and take a look at the salesman drop-down box on our orders form. As you can see, there is only one salesman in the salesman drop-down box. That is because Andrew Fuller is the only user in the salesman table which belongs to the same admin group as I do. And last but definitely not least topic I wanted to talk about today in this class is the look and feel of the drop-down boxes. You have a few options how you might want to display the drop-downs. By default, the drop-downs will be displayed as a drop-down box with 1 row. However, you can increase the number of rows to your liking. For example, I will change it to 3 rows, and let me quickly show you how this would look. Let me refresh the page. And as you can see, there are now 3 products displayed in the product drop-down box. Another way to display the drop-down box is the edit box with Ajax pop-up. So let's take a look how exactly this will be displayed. I'm going to start typing the product name, and as I do, the suggested values will be displayed in the dropdown, and I can select any of the values from the dropdown. Also, if I start typing and there is no match from what I typed to the values in the dropdown, and I move out of the control, you're going to see a red border around the control, which means there is no match, and I have to actually modify it. Let's take a look at a different example. If you have a text field, what you can do is you can allow a free input for this field, which will let you just freely enter any value, any text value in that field. So let's take a look. So let's build a project. And let's go back to the sales table, salesman table. So here's our title field. So I may start typing as with the value. So those are the 2 values, sales manager or sales representative. I can either select one of the values, or I can actually just keep it as sales. So this will be my value. And let's give it a name. And let's save it. So this is my record, and as you can see, I didn't have to specify one of the values from the dropdown. I actually have a free text value, sales, that's written back to the salesman table. So let's go back to the orders table once again, our products control. So let's see if we can change it to the list page with the search and see how exactly this will look. So let's build a project. I'm going to go back to the orders table. Okay, so we have our new order. Let's pick something here. So our product, as you can see, it's a input field with the select button. So it will, when you click on the select, you're going to see a pop-up with all of the available options for product names. This is a very convenient way to display a large number of values to select from. In our case, we have quite a few. We have 4 pages worth. So we can use the search to search through our products, for example. So we have all of the records with the CH in the name, and I can pick any of them here. Let's say this one, number 12, and now our product box is populated with the value. Okay, and you can save the record if you want to. Another way to display the drop-down box is the checkbox, and this is especially helpful if you have a large number of records as well, and you can select the checkboxes. You can do one of 2 things. You can display the checkboxes vertically, or you can do them horizontally. So you can check that off right here. Let's take a look. So if we build this, and now all of the values are displayed as a horizontal checkboxes. Okay. Also, you can actually select multiple checkboxes if our product control wears a text field. You can select multiple checkboxes, and the values would have been written back to the table, comma delimited. So actually, let me show you real quick. Let me pick a different table, different control that has a text field. For example, let's use the same title as we did before, and let's change it to a checkbox. We'll keep it as horizontal layout, that's fine. So I'm going to build a project once more. And let me go back to the salesman table. Now, as you can see, we have 4 different values that I can choose from. So let's do that one more time. So let's pick a sales manager and maybe a sales representative and save it. And now if we go back to our table, you can see here's our Jane Doe. And for the title, she has 2 titles, sales manager and sales representative. So this is our Jane Doe with the sales manager and sales representative as her 2 titles. Another setting of the drop-down box that you might want to consider using is setting the default value. For example, in my title control, I can set the default value of sales manager, which will default the value of the title drop-down box when user lands on the salesman form. So let's take a look how this will look on the generated application. So as you can see, as soon as I land on the Add New Record page, the Sales Manager is the default value populated in a title drop-down box. Another interesting feature regarding the drop-down boxes that is worth mentioning is the autofill feature, which lets you populate multiple controls on your form from your lookup table. For example, if I'm entering a new salesman information, I can autofill some of the controls from my lookup table, which is the employee table. Employee table would populate the first name in my sales table, and same thing for the address and city and region. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's build a project and let's take a look how this will look again. So let's refresh the page. So now if I select a last name, you can see that the first name and the address information is auto-populated. Or I can pick a different last name, and once again the first name and the address information has been updated as well. This will allow your users to actually save some time when they're creating a new record. And this actually completes our class for today for the drop-downs. I hope you have a much better understanding how that drop-downs can be used in your web applications. Thank you.